Amaroo fire. Last weekend at Sydney's Amaroo Park, some of the rarest birds came back to the racetrack as part of the Jaguar car's historic meet. But it wasn't only the cars that captured the limelight. Few people become living legends. This man is one of the few. Mention the name Stirling Moss and everyone thinks motor racing. It's been that way for more than 30 years. Moss emerged in an era of big front-engine cars that required a big-fisted driving approach. Racetracks were primitive by today's standards, extremely dangerous. The cars didn't even have seatbelts. The driver literally took his life in his hands and his feet. Moss had the accident that most drivers fear, piloting a Lotus at Goodwood in 1962. He clung to life by the barest of threads. His career as a Formula One racer was over. But the urge to drive remained with Moss. And to the surprise and the delight of the fans, Stirling came back. Today, this diminutive giant still drives the world's racetracks for a living. Not in Formula One, but in one of Britain's most famous exports, the Jaguar car. Last weekend, Stirling returned to Sydney to drive at Amaroo Park at the Jaguar historic car meeting. To see him was to step back in time. The same pale blue driving suit, the same style helmet he wore 3 decades ago. Moss at the steering wheel is like a painter at his canvas. You expect to see artistry. A slight crunch into first gear, and Moss is where he feels best, out on the tar, racing. You notice he doesn't grip the steering wheel. He almost caresses it. It's very much a lover's touch, guiding the car through the corners, using the power like a conductor's baton as he orchestrates each lap. Moss is a racer's racer. He believes the fans pay to see him not just drive, but to drive at speed. As he quickly learns the track, his times come down. The pit wall is crowded as his fellow drivers watch him weave a magic of a lifetime's experience. Stirling Moss is a people's person. He steps straight out of the car, strolls down pit lane and chats his way back to his pit bay.
It must be very hard for you nowadays to travel the globe, go from different circuits, drive other people's cars, they're set up for other people, and there's a lot of pressure on you.
Well, the problem is that, you come here, I don't know the circuit, I don't know the car, and if you set a car up for Jack Brabham and myself, it'd be quite different, and we have to meld ourselves and to come and learn a circuit, learn a car, and then people expect you to make it fly, That is a responsibility, because obviously I'm not as young as I was, I'm not as quick as I was, but people still want to see you do something that's extraordinary, and I hope I don't do anything extraordinary. I hope that I go fast and cleanly, and that'll be it.
Of course, you came up through the school where team discipline was everything, and you learned under one of the great masters of the sport.
Well, that was 1955. There were no more English cars to drive, and I joined Mercedes, Daimler-Benz, and of course I had Fangio, who in my mind is the greatest driver who's ever lived. And I did a lot of following of Fangio, learned an awful lot. Occasionally I might get past him, but not often, I'll tell you that.
There was a time in the British Grand Prix where you actually waved him through after leading the race and going on to win it.
Well, I waved him through because I come round the last corner, I was flat on the floor, and I pulled over and I thought, okay, if you can pass me, boy, you've got 100 horsepower more, so it was not really very fair. It was a gesture, that's all.
Just recapping on some of your great drives, the one at Monaco and the Lotus, where you led the very latest cars and won.
Well, that was 1961, which probably was my finest road race. The car was about 50 horsepower short on the Ferraris, and luckily it's a very twisty circuit. It was 100 laps, it was hot weather, and I was feeling on good form, and the car went with no trouble, and I managed to win it. But which meant an enormous amount to me, because England at that time, not now, but then, were certainly the underdogs.
Moss won the famed Mille Miglia in 1955, driving for Mercedes. 1,000 miles across Italy on public roads. So dangerous a race that it was abandoned in 1957. In winning, Moss and his navigator, the author Dennis Jenkinson, averaged an incredible 100 miles per hour.
It had never been won by a foreigner, only once before, and that was many years earlier. And the car that we had was very good. We were doing up to 180 miles an hour, which was pretty fast on the road, I'll tell you.
That race was pretty tough.
Yes, it really was a very, very tough race, very tough.
Recently you had the chance to drive one of the latest Formula One cars, and I believe you really were impressed with them.
Oh, well, the car actually I drove was a Brabham. It was Nelson Piquet's Brabham with a BMW, up to nearly 800 horsepower, and it was absolutely breathtaking. When I tell you that a modern Formula One car will go from 60 to 100 in 1.5 seconds. Now, that isn't long. And, I mean, to get in there and feel it was exhilarating, but I wouldn't obviously push it to the limit because no way am I confident to do so.
Are today's drivers better than your day?
I don't think they're better. I think probably the average is higher. I don't think there's anybody today who's better than Fangio was in his heyday, but I certainly think that they are as good, probably. I think you've got, you know, the PKs and these sort of guys, Prost, Lauda and so on, and I think they are extremely competent, and there's no two ways about it. They have a lot of pressure, more pressure than we did. I mean, theirs is commercial pressure. Mind you, they paid for it. They paid a lot of money. But I don't think they get the fun that we got.
It's obvious that Stirling Moss savours every second of his life, which is probably not surprising in someone who has risked it so often. Nothing makes you appreciate life more, it's said, than by confronting your own death. Stirling Moss is as British as the boxing kangaroo is Australian. He is the king that was never crowned.
Out of 400 races, you won over 200, and yet you never ever won a world championship.
At the time I was annoyed, at the time I was upset because I really felt that I could beat the drivers who won it. Now I'm philosophical, I don't care a damn, and the fact that I didn't win it is good because you're able to ask me the question. Rather than sort of say, well, you know, what year was it you got the title? So trying, to me, the race that matters is the one today.
Great driver and a nice bloke too, Stirling Moss. And Tappy, I guess he's always going to be famous because his name's virtually in the language. I mean, any time you talk about someone, you say, "God, you're driving like Stirling Moss."
Yeah, exactly. I heard a radio interview recently, which Ita Buttrose did with Stirling Moss on 2UE. I was driving the car somewhere and I got absolutely riveted with the interview. He made some fascinating observations. He regards Fangio as the greatest ever racing driver for the prime reason that concentration, in Stirling Moss's opinion, is the prime component in the makeup of any top racing driver, and he said Fangio had more intense concentration than any other driver he's ever